What is up, my dragonflies? So welcome back to another video, and I hope everyone has had an amazing day. We're back with Hood Nature, aka Casual Geographic, and this is without otters, the world would be on fire. Without otters, the world would be on fire. Without otters, the world would be on fire. So sit back, relax, get your snacks, and let's get into it.
Video was sponsored by my need for validation.
Hey. Is that him, right?
Life is just a never-ending game of Jenga, where all you're trying to do is build something worth the effort without it all crashing down and scratching your mother's coffee table. The thing with Jenga is, every block's important, but some blocks are just an instant game over. Nature's kind of the same way. Every animal, from mosquitoes to monkeys, from pigeons to platypuses, everything with a heartbeat has some type of role in this giant ball of dirt and water. But where losing some animals might be bad for the environment, losing certain animals could be GG's for the whole thing. The worst part is, we usually don't know which block is a trip block until someone plays God and pulls it. Like with the sea otter. Okay, disclaimer, I don't think I've ever been more conflicted about an animal. Like, I'm smart enough to know these water wolverines are wild animals that'll play gotcha-nose with their teeth.
Yeah, I went to the Long Beach Aquarium and I learned that I think it was the something that's something under the sea. I think it's the coral, something like that. That's under the sea and it's fading away. Basically, what I'm trying to say is everything is connected on what is life. Does that make sense? So if it were in trees, aka in the Amazon rainforest, we wouldn't live. If there were no sun, we would not be existing. So I'm trying to say is something in the ocean is, I don't want to dying, but it's, yeah, so we're all connected, but something in the ocean is fading away. I don't know I forgot what it is. I think it's coral, something like that, but put it out there.
And they'll have you looking like you could unlock Voldemort's phone. But I'm also dumb enough to let them, just cause they're cute. I'm aware they have one of the most violent mating rituals I've ever read about, but they also hold hands while sleeping and they wrap their babies in cloud blankets so they don't float away. One thing I will say is that without these water weasels, the ocean would almost certainly be in a pack. And it's all because sea otters need a borderline eating disorder just to survive. These guys are all marine mammals, but one is not like the others. Sea otters don't have blubber or a layer of fat to keep them warm. When you live in the ocean full time, that's living life on veteran difficulty, which is why sea otters can put away 25% of their body weight in food every single day, all just to fuel their metabolism and not freeze from otter to article. 25% in food would be like me downing 95 Big Macs. I know this because I did the math. Don't ask me if I have a problem, I probably do. These furry food vacuums have a grocery list of basically anything that isn't nailed down, but the most important thing they eat are sea urchins. A motivated male can put away up to 50 sea urchins in a 24-hour binge, which is what makes this high sea honey badger one of those do not touch Jenga blocks. Cause sea urchins are vicious vegans that eat kelp like they get paid for it. Kelp forests provide food as well as shelter and a nursery for several species of animals. Not only that, but this water cactus will literally spawn camp. They'll go into this weird hibernation on top of a kelp bed, but only reanimate to eat any seaweed that sprouts up. So without otters to keep the sea urchins in check, a bunch of animals would basically become homeless, if not starved in past tense completely. Pretty much Jengaing this entire community. And it literally took nearly hunting this live-action plush toy into extinction before we realized this. I showed this picture before for a reason. In places where sea otters were stat-padded into oblivion and the sea urchins started wilding out, what used to be kelp forests quickly became underwater deserts. Basically diversity dead spots. Instead of a PWY, this dead spot represents the loss of an ecosystem that actually helps us more than most people realize. Add the fact that kelp forests help fight climate change, and you begin to realize just how wild the butterfly effect really is. Some guy liked the way a certain coat fell, next thing you know, global warming's up 3-1 on us. Sea otters aren't the only ones with that kind of power. This is a wolf eel. It's not a wolf, it's not an eel, it's a fish fresh out of Tim Burton's Wet Dream. If you've never heard of it before, it's because pretty privilege is painfully real. But I will say this, Nemo's paralysis demon has a relationship many people wish they had. Wolffish mate for life, and when a male and female do pair up, they'll find a cave and basically move in together.
So ugly.
And one to guard the eggs while the other one eats. The one that does stay behind will gently massage the eggs and turn them over to make sure they receive enough oxygen and proper circulation. At worst, it's healthy co-parenting, and at best, it's a marriage worth slapping a comedian over. It's a marriage where everyone eats. But speaking of eating, that's actually what makes this fish another important block in the ocean's Jenga tower, since they'll use that demonic overbite to eat animals like the sea urchin. And the Atlantic wolffish in particular eats enough sea urchins to where if you Thanos snap them, a lot of animals will be down bad too. But they don't get the credit otters do, cause Well, who would you rather turn into a stuffed animal? That's why sea otters and the Atlantic wolffish are both considered keystone species. Keystone basically means that in a Jenga tower of life, taking out the keystone or block would turn the entire tower into ground zero. And I would love to pretend the whole Jenga analogy was a play on the word keystone, but nah, I didn't realize that till halfway through writing this. Sometimes I'm not clever, I'm just lucky. Obviously, if you delete an entire species, there's always going to be some kind of net negative. But with a keystone like the otter, it would be 1,000 times worse. Like, even though they're both important, missing Michael Jordan for an entire playoffs is going to hit a little different than losing Luke Longley. And as a Heat fan, not having Mario Chalmers for a finals game might cost me an hour of sleep. Take out LeBron and suddenly I'm an insomniac. There's a bunch of different types of keystone species, but one of the most famous and the one you likely learned about first are probably beavers. Since beavers shape their entire communities just by being themselves. They're bucktooth engineers that'll build dams to create ponds. In the middle of these ponds are lodges, and that is the beaver's home address. Having waterside real estate makes it less likely for them to get turned into a Happy Meal by bears, wolves, cougars, coyotes, owls, lynxes, bobcat. You see why they need the lodge? Without it, they're the lollipop of the north. They take licks from everybody. But it also means in some places, beavers are single-handedly responsible for creating wetlands, making the beaver yet another key block on the Jenga tower. Beaver dams and the wetlands they create lead to more herbaceous plants growing by the water. They also help clean out pollution from rivers and streams, and about half of the endangered species in North America depend on the wetlands that beavers help engineer. Basically, take out this plus-size water gerbil, and you're sentencing several animals to the gulag too. Also, if you play the sound of running water on a speaker, beavers will instinctively start building a dam over it. That has nothing to do with anything, I just find that fact fun. But unlike beavers, most keystone species are usually predators, and that concept's pretty simple. Without an equalizer to eat the prey would ironically eat themselves and everything around them to death. Which is why tiger sharks also earn a keystone title. Here are some things that have been found inside a tiger shark. Plates, rubber boots, a bag of money, a chicken coop, a full suit of armor, and a human leg. One thing about sharks, they're not racist. They don't see color and they do not discriminate. And just like with otters and sea urchins, tiger sharks are population control for a bunch of animals, like sea turtles, especially the ones that like to graze on seagrass. Seagrass that's an important habitat and shelter for fish and shellfish. It's an easy domino effect. No tiger sharks means more sea turtles, means less seagrass, means more fish and shellfish on the streets. Or in this case, reefs. Which is why most sharks are considered keystones in the ocean community. For example, when most of the great white sharks in the North Atlantic got packed up, that led to the number of cow-nosed rays exploding. Those rays proceeded to decimate nearly the entire population of scallops, clams, and oysters. Sharks are the ultimate equalizer. Take them out and that tower gets less stable than the marriage of a comedian slapping back in the 90s rapping Air to Bel Air. Yeah, that's probably strike two. But oftentimes it takes a tower toppling over to realize just how important that block was. Best example is when we literally had to mess around and find out in Yellowstone. If you haven't heard this story, you about to hear some shit. Once upon a time, the cousin of man's best friend was public enemy number one, and wolves got put on a list. And the reason why? Well, if wolves didn't hate us before, they had a really good reason to now. Basically, in the before time, settlers came on the scene with their livestock, mostly cattle. As the practice of agriculture grew, animals on the wolves' grocery list like buffalo started disappearing from the aisles. All it took were a few going after livestock for America to declare a war on wolves. Any wolf that was spotted within the same area code as livestock was immediately taken off the census with brutal prejudice. At one point, even the U.S. Army showed up and got their shots up. And to add insult to massacre, in 1883 there was a law passed that prohibited hunting of most animals.
They shot a better defense.
You should know, wolves were not most animals.
Cattle.
Even tried to justify it by calling wolves an undesired predator and implied that the environment would be better off without them. Basically, America gaslit wolves. Like if you broke into my house, replaced most of the food in my refrigerator, and then turned me and my family into chalk outlines for touching the ground beef you left in my freezer. Now, guys and gals, on a scale from Reddit incel to Tiana Trump, how screwed do you think we were after we basically squad wiped wolves? The answer? We got casting couched. Without wolves applying top-down pressure, the elk population got out of pocket, and they ate the area code. Because even with cougars, coyotes, and even bears, the main thing keeping the elk down got put on the newspaper by us, and as a result, it stripped the land of vegetation. But it actually went deeper than that. Without the threat of wolves keeping the elk on the move, the elk were able to stay in one place and eat that place completely clean. Animals that relied on wolf leftovers like ravens, magpies, and even bears had to get their protein elsewhere. And if that wasn't bad enough, one of the things that the elk destroyed was the willow. The same willow that dam-building beavers needed to survive the winter. The same beavers responsible for creating the willow. Without the threat of wolves keeping the elk on the move, the elk were able to stay in one place and eat that place completely clean. Animals that relied on wolf leftovers like ravens, magpies, and even bears had to get their protein elsewhere. And if that wasn't bad enough, one of the things that the elk destroyed was the willow. The same willow that dam-building beavers needed to survive the winter. The same beavers responsible for creating wetlands, which meant yet another Jenga block that hit the hardwood. And I like to imagine the wolves that got murked on sight watched this all go down from the afterlife like, Yeah, ain't that a bit? It got to the point where we had to airdrop wolves back to Yellowstone to try to Uno reverse the damage. And by the time we did that, there was only one colony of beavers left. Today there's about 100 wolves left in Yellowstone after we did everything in our power to abolish them. Because removing a keystone species is like leaving a toxic relationship. But then your life gets worse and worse until you realize you were the problem. It's honestly the butterfly effect served on trend. And again, you never know which block's going to be the game over. For example, one of these guys was one of the first animals to be identified as a keystone species. Any idea which one? It was actually the purple sea star. This is Robert Payne. He's a zoologist who was credited with coming up with the keystone concept. He's also 6'6". Must be nice. To better understand how nature and all the things in it are connected, Payne ventured out to a bay near Washington State, where he proceeded to yeet as many starfish as he could find. For years, Payne would return to the same stretch of rock and turn any starfish into a frisbee just to see what would happen with them gone. Few identified as one, his name was ironic. What happened is that, like SpongeBob's Day 1, sea stars eat almost anything, and the particular ones he had eaten ate mostly mussels. It sure looked freaky, don't it? With this main op out of the way, the mussels started multiplying and eventually gentrified the entire stretch of rock, to the point where they actually forced other species out. By evicting Patrick's family, the diversity of the community went from 15 species to 8, since there were no longer any starfish to keep the mussels down. And of course, sea stars don't do this on purpose. They have no brain, nothing they do is on purpose. But by being themselves, sea stars kept the mussels from multiplying, which gave the other species a chance. I wonder if I can get guidelined for this. The irony is, since mussels are a foundational species, having an entire bed of them created a habitat for even more species. So in the long run, it actually improved diversity. Because nature would honestly rather break its own rules and be predictable. But by sending starfish into orbit, Dr. Payne helped us understand the Jenga effect of taking out the wrong block. But animals don't have to meal prep their neighbors to be considered keystones. Some scientists actually considered sloths to be in the keystone tier. One reason is because the entire existence of multiple animals depends on this dead-eyed, blind with no glasses, slower than molasses moss carpet. Up to 80 different species of animal live rent-free in sloth fur. In fact, one sloth can have up to 800 moths, beetles, worms, and roaches hitching around in this jungle taxi. These algae trailer homes also carry fungi, and scientists now believe that the chemicals produced by this fungus can be used to fight malaria, other parasitic diseases, and even cancer. This shag carpet come to life could really be the reason we win the war on cancer. Maybe sloths aren't so weak. I did say maybe. Then you have this guy. The southern hairy-nosed wombat is a marsupial that spends most of its life in underground burrows. So much of this dirt koala's personality involves digging that they literally have a backwards pouch. That way the kids don't literally eat dirt every time the mother digs a new home, which is also what makes this Ewok an unintentional hero. Animals often use vacant wombat burrows as shelter, especially during bushfires. And during droughts, wombats unintentionally save their neighbors by digging out watering holes that end up being used by kangaroos, wallabies, possums, goannas, and even emus. Wombats manage to give back to the community just by being themselves, even though they give me old man introvert energy. And if there was an African shadow clone of the wombat, it would definitely be the aardvark. It's the same thing where aardvarks will dig out burrows that eventually get used as nurseries for hyenas, wild dogs, lizards, and snakes. Animals will also use this dirt pig's abandoned bunkers as a place to hide from the brutal African sun. Aardvarks are also single-handedly responsible for a type of plant, since they're usually the only ones eating it and spreading the seeds, which is how the aardvark cucumber got its name, and how aardvarks might be the most underrated animal here. But the biggest keystone of them all is the elephant. No, like literally. They're the biggest. During dry seasons, they dig up riverbeds and create watering holes that other animals can drink from. They're a free Uber for plant seeds and help spread them across the environment. Elephants play a role in the ecosystem simply by knocking down trees and undergrowth. And as the world's heaviest gardeners, they help clear room for different types of grass. And by straight up flexing trees right out the ground, vertically challenged animals like the impala score a free meal off the elephant's muscle. And in forests, put out the heaviest gardeners, they help own the ecosystems from. They're a free Uber for plant seeds and help spread them across the environment. Elephants play a role in the ecosystem simply by knocking down trees and undergrowth. And as the world's heaviest gardeners, they help clear room for different types of grass. And by straight up flexing trees right out the ground, vertically challenged animals like the impala score a free meal off the elephant's muscle. And in forests, plus-size pachyderms create clearings to help sunlight reach the floor, which gives lower-lying plants a chance. Because elephants are the CEO of looking after the little guy. And when you're built like a 5-ton armored vibe check, everyone's little. And without these African architects doing them, that Jenga tower would fold on itself. Moral of the story, life's irrelevant without elephants. That's gonna do it for this video. For more consistent content, be sure to follow my Instagram and TikTok. I try to post daily on both. And if you want access to content before I post it, or you wanna like buy me food or something, my Patreon's also gonna be in the description in case you wanna support this low quality vertically filmed content. Which is a question I often get, and the answer is I film vertically for the same reason God made me 5'11" with scoliosis. It's to keep me humble. Plus, if I started filming horizontally, it would really be over for everybody. I'm just trying to give these other YouTubers a chance. That's sarcasm, by the way. I wish I was that cocky. Okay, last plug and I swear we're done. But if you haven't heard, I have a book coming out July 5th that's currently available for pre-order, as well as an audiobook in case you're like me and have the attention span of a hyper-caffeinated squirrel. Aside from that, drink water, hug your mother, be sure to thank your local otter, and I'll see you in the next one.
That is so freaking cute. So this was without otters, the world would be on fire. So tell me guys what you think. Hood Nature, thank you so much. Thank you guys again for tuning in. Love you guys, and remember to have the most awesome positive day. Stay grateful, stay blessed, and until next time you guys, deuces.